Rain had been speaking for an hour, and no one had answered it. Inside the abandoned charcoal burner's hut, the cedar beams hung blackened from decades of smoke, and a single iron brazier glowed amber at the center of the room. Saya knelt close to its warmth, the recipe scroll open across her knees, her face caught in the firelight, one half gold, one half shadow. The scroll would not lie flat. Its edges curled upward as though the paper were trying to remember being bark. She read the same sentence for the fourth time. Her grandmother used to say that a recipe was a conversation between the living and the dead. Saya had always thought she meant flavor or memory. She had not thought she meant this. Her finger moved across a character on the scroll, not reading, but locating. "The column numbers," she said. Then in a flat and careful voice, like a woman diffusing something, "They're not measurements. They were never measurements. Column 3, ingredient 9, the quantity notations, they're a reference grid. She built it into the formatting, the whole time." Across the room, Uma sat inspecting a knot in the floorboard as though it had personally offended her. The stillness in her hands was total. From near the door, Tessai spoke with the low dread of a man about to understand something he could not unknow. "A reference grid for what?" "I don't know yet," Saya answered cleanly. No tremor. The tremor was somewhere she had put it away. Kaito sat against the far wall, arms folded, watching her with the quality of attention a hawk gives to weather. "How many scrolls did she leave you?" he asked, his voice precise and uninflected. The fire stood between them. "3, Saya said softly, but without yielding. "This one. A preparation scroll for the bone broth, and one I have never been able to read. The characters are archaic. I thought they were ritual script, village blessing language." "They are not ritual script," Kaito said. Something beneath his flat tone had shifted by a single degree. Understanding arrived in Saya's face like weather coming from the east. "You've seen the third scroll," she said. It was not a question. "I've seen a copy." Um's hand moved, and she stopped it. Tessai made a sound that was not quite a word, then wrestled the beginning of a catastrophe into a whisper. "A copy! There is a copy! Which means someone made a copy! Which means someone read it before we did! Which means we are sitting inside whatever that person already knows!" "Tessai!" Cut in, sharp and maternal, severing the thread before it could ravel. "Yes, right. Later," he said. Kaito stood and moved 2 steps nearer the brazier. Not for warmth, his posture refused warmth, but the firelight reached his open hands now. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small folded document sealed with plain paper twine and bearing no official stamp. He set it on the floor between himself and Saya, not pushing it toward her, simply setting down something he had been carrying too long. "I was assigned to your case 11 months before the assassination," he said, and the measurement of his voice now required effort it had not required before. The accusation was not reactive. Someone constructed the accusation first and then arranged the event around it. The rain, the fire, the smell of wet cedar and old smoke. "You knew," Saya said very quietly, the quiet of an open field before a storm breaks over it. "I knew the shape, not the reason. I was given the shape and told to fill it with a name. And you chose mine." He did not answer. The answer lay in the document on the floor. Had finally looked up, her expression that of a woman performing calculations she had hoped she would never need. "Whose shape?" she said, every word weighed before release. "Who wrote the original order?" The seal on the original assignment was the office of the 3rd Magistrate of the Northern Circuit." Tessai's catastrophizing went very quiet, which was worse. "Okuda." The name landed like a stone in still water. "You know him," Kaito said. "He was at the shrine 32 years ago. He was one of the men who came for the package." Tessai's white-knuckled hands opened slowly, and he looked at his own palms as though seeing them for the first time. "He didn't get it. He came back twice. After the 3rd time I moved the package inside the wall behind the south pillar, I told him I had burned everything. I think he believed me because I looked like the kind of man who would do that." Saya spoke then, and there was no accusation in it, only something worse, understanding. "So he spent 30 years unable to find what he needed. And then my grandmother died, and I started walking the routes. I was visible. I was licensed. I had a name on every inn register from here to the coast. You were traceable," Kaito said, hearing his own arithmetic read back to him. "I was a map." Saya set the scroll down with extraordinary gentleness, the way one puts a sleeping child to bed. Later, the brazier had been fed a single small cedar log, and the fire burned steadier and warmer. Someone had hung a cloth across the gap in the door. Saya knelt at her corner with a small iron pot suspended over the flame, steam rising in a fine column toward the smoke-dark ceiling. The others had unconsciously drifted closer to the warmth, though none of them would admit to moving. She worked with the economy of someone who had cooked in small, dark spaces for a long time, opening a cloth bundle of dried mushrooms, a thumb of dried citrus peel, and something wrapped in persimmon leaf. She did not explain what she was making. The smell began before anyone spoke. "You're cooking, now," Tessai said, quietly amazed, the catastrophe voice gone, replaced by something younger. "The pot is here. The water is here," Saya replied matter-of-factly, as a woman who had cooked in worse moments. "We have 4 hours until the pass clears. We should eat." Dryness covered something softer that chose not to hide completely. "She always does this. Something falls apart, and she feeds everyone. I used to find it suspicious. I've decided it's simply who she is." A small thread of warmth ran beneath Saya's practicality as she stirred without looking up. What do you know about the third scroll that you haven't told me?" The ladle kept moving. The question arrived without drama, which was what made it land so completely. Umi went still, not the stillness of calculation this time, but something closer to the moment before confession. "There is a man in the valley town, below the pass," she began, slower than her usual pace, each word chosen after the last. "He calls himself a merchant of lacquerware. He was in Magistrate Okuda's household as a secretary for 6 years before he disappeared. He reappeared here 6 months ago, 8 months after your grandmother died, 2 months before the assassination." "You've known this since the way station?" "Yes." The fire settled. No one filled the silence prematurely. "Tell me the rest," Saya said, not anger, but something more demanding, something that required the other person to fully exist in the moment. Uma's voice was the sound of a ledger being opened that was meant to stay closed. "He's also the man who bought my former employer's debts when I ran. He owns my ledgers now, the ones with the names." Kaito's recalibration showed only in the angle of his head. "Which names?" he asked, not threatening, but absolutely precise. "Everyone Okuda ever paid for silence. 15 years of accounts. What he bought, what he sold, who he ruined, including—" She stopped. "Including," Kaito said, quieter still. Looked at Saya, not at Kaito. This was addressed to Saya. "Including a payment 11 months ago to a shogunate inspector for the construction of a named criminal case." The steam rose and the smell of citrus and mushroom and something restorative climbed into the dark. Kaito did not move. He absorbed it with the stillness of a man braced for a blow who finds, when it arrives, that the blow is clean. Saya was looking at him. She was not looking away. "Then we need those ledgers," she said, the stillness of someone choosing not to spend breath on the obvious, spending it instead on the necessary. "When the broth is ready, everyone drinks. Then we plan." She ladled the first cup and set it in the center of the floor, not toward Kaito, not toward not toward Tessai, in the center, for whoever was ready. Her grandmother had always said the 9th ingredient was not something you added. It was something you stopped leaving out. She had meant courage or honesty, or possibly both, knowing they were the same thing, and she had waited 30 years for someone to be ready to understand it. Tessai picked up the cup and warmed his hands on it. He did not drink yet. He simply held the warmth, present, here. Kaito looked at the cup. The cup was still there. The cup was always still there. He reached out and took it, the document he had placed on the floor now behind him, the cup in front of him, one clean cut between them.